Okay, we need to get busy here and talk about the word for the week. And we always suggest that everyone write it down, think about it, reflect on it. How does it work in your life? Can you do this better? And the word this week is conflict.
Not that we're not short on that one.
We're
around the
not.
country.
We have a tendency the last couple of weeks, we can keep bringing this stuff up.
I know you do.
I don't know it, but
I tried to avoid it.
it trying to avoid conflict. That's right.
Yes.
But conflict is a serious problem because there's disagreements, there are arguments, there are clashes among opposing ideas and interests that people have. And so it can be a noun, it can be a verb, it can be an adjective. But as a verb, it means to clash with, actually, come into opposition. And another really good word, it's incompatible. So it's contradictory. And the original sense of the word actually was striking together, which came to recognize the clash or a struggle. Now, some of the synonyms, which we can all think of, I mean, what's a good word for synonym for you as far as conflicting? What do you think? Another good word for that.
For conflicting or you?
No, conflicting. Oh, you're not saying I'm conflicting, are you? Okay, so I'm talking about, disputes, struggles, clashes, fights, discord, confrontation. All of those are synonyms.
Yeah, well, what comes to our right off the bat is confrontation.
Confrontation, right, yeah. So the opposites of that would be agreement. In other words, it's disagreement to conflict. Agreement would be an opposite, and harmony, unity. And so where we work with this word is in personal development, most inner growth. And this word conflict, it's internal or it's external. And most of the time what we're doing is dealing with external things, like you go to the office, and your office coworker, they've got a different idea. So that conflicting comes in when they've got theirs. And so how do we handle those disagreements, though? And of course, probably the most division that we've ever had in our world, or in the United States, I mean, it's pretty heavy today. Yes. All this division, all this conflicting ideas. But, the period that we always go back to when we had a great deal of conflict was during the Civil War. And Abraham Lincoln, how did he handle that? And we'll talk about that. But in our personal development, it begins with this inner conflict when we clash with our habits. All right? Our habits and our belief, we begin to clash with those things. Looking at, as I mentioned, a business setting where the team faces an idea or a conflict between the priorities. Mm-hmm. Should we do first? And the way we handle that, though, is like you and I have talked many times, is about with effective communication. We work at it. I mean, that's why it's one of my biggest things that I believe that we need to talk and have a discussion about the 6 or 8 major things: God, sex, money, relationships, and of course, politics. We got to talk about it and find some common ground. And then in a leadership context, great leaders do not avoid conflict. What they do is they manage it with getting clarity, finding out what is the purpose, and then giving grace to it. So that's the way a great leader would handle that. Do not avoid it, because we grow in the conflict. We will grow. And then in family, of course, other relationships that we have, it comes to a conflict in your heart. How do you really feel about something? And so it's always, what is the easiest thing to do, but what is the right thing to do? True. Okay, yeah, what is right? What is easy? And so in our mindset, that's where the results that we get in our mindset from conflicting beliefs, one of us in our mind, we've kind of got these two guys. We got this one guy on one shoulder and another guy, and they are yelling at one another. One of them's very positive, one of them's very negative. And what happens is one part of us wants to make a change. We want to make a change. But the other one, they fear the change because of the uncertainty. Okay, when, let's say, the board of directors, in looking at the vision for the future of the company, they start to have conflict about, okay, do we want to grow, get bigger? Do we want to concentrate on more products? I mean, decisions you're making in the business. And when you're having these conflicts, these clashes back and forth, what happens is that the momentum of the company begins to stall. So you can't go anywhere because the decision making itself is when we really get down. So let's just take that some people that are in maybe a relationship where they're getting to know each other and everything, and maybe for a long-term relationship of getting married, they might have a desire for their continued independence, all right? But then they have a need for the connection. So that's creating that conflict. And of course, we always conflict in a lot of ways when we start talking about our value system, helping someone find clarity. So as a coach, one of the things that I do is that we look at the conflict that is actually in our heart when we're looking at coaching someone. That's one of the first things we try to get to is, what is your purpose and why do we do things like that? But so it's the whole problem originates with our conflicting beliefs. One part of us wants change, the other fears the change. So identifying these values and these things that we really believe in that maybe people disagree with is to help someone find their purpose, their why, and the clarity. So a great question in a coaching session would be to say, where in your life do you feel there's a conflict between your values and your answers and your actions? Is there any conflict in you from an internal standpoint about that? So that'd be a great question to ask the coachee. Think about it. Reflect on your life and the things that are going on to make those decisions. And then maybe if you're doing a workshop or you're making a presentation, it doesn't mean, if there's conflict, it doesn't mean something is broken or something is deadly wrong. A lot of times the conflict is where the birthplace of a breakthrough actually comes from. That's why great leaders, they don't discard the conflict. They don't try to avoid it. We're going to stick our head in the sand and we're not going to talk about it. No, we need to talk about it. So maybe you go to, I know I do a workshop on creating winning relationships. And one of the things that we do is say, okay, participants, identify 2 conflicting beliefs that you hold on to and write one action step that could help you resolve the tension in that conflict. So going back to Abraham Lincoln, he said in his second inaugural address, he said, with malice toward none, with charity for all. Handling the conflict. So he approached it with humility, empathy, and he had a great desire for the restoration of the Union. But see, he didn't avoid it because it had been pretty hard to avoid what he was going through. But, it's inevitable that we're going to have conflict. It's there. It's going to be there because we got human beings. But actual combat is optional if we want to go to war over the differences. But we need to have those discussions. And I think one of the biggest barriers and excuses we use is we can agree to disagree. See, that stops all conversation.
True.
So you must come face to face with the conflict. Live at peace with everyone. And if you handle it, you get wisdom. Use your wisdom.
Yes, and some people don't want to go that far.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think we got to quit sticking our head in the sand and let's talk about this stuff.
True.
Let's talk.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, there's the wisdom from Kenneth O'Neal, and you can chat with him at merger@windstream.net. You can send him an email, or he goes out and buys you lunch or breakfast or gets a cup of coffee or something. You'll have to pass that on, right?
I will. Yeah, we'll do it. Just they can send me a text, 830-285-7010, 285-7010. Texas Hill Country, 830 is the area code. Text me, call me. I'm welcome. Call me.
All right. Thanks, Kenneth.
No conflict.
Have a great week, sir. Thank you.
I will, sir. Thank you.